Here's a great recipe for maple salmon submitted by an Allrecipes member who goes by Star Flower. She writes that, "This is the best and most delicious salmon recipe and very easy to prepare. I love maple in everything and put this together one night. My husband totally loved it. He did not like salmon that much until he had this." In this recipe, you'll marinate the salmon for about 30 minutes before cooking it. To make the marinade, combine a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, two tablespoons of soy sauce, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground black pepper. And then mince a clove of garlic and mix it into the marinade. For 4 servings, place about 1 pound of salmon into a shallow glass baking dish and pour the maple syrup mixture over the salmon. A resealable plastic bag also works great for marinating, particularly if you don't have room in your refrigerator for a large baking dish. Give the fillets a quick bath in the marinade, and then cover the dish with plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, turning the salmon over once. Meanwhile, preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Once the fish has sufficiently marinated, remove the plastic wrap and place the baking dish in the oven. Bake the salmon uncovered for about 20 minutes until it easily flakes with a fork. Serve the maple salmon with a green vegetable for a delicious, healthy meal. So tasty, it may even turn non-seafood lovers around. When people hear Cajun, they usually think spicy. This Cajun chicken pasta, submitted by Allrecipes member Tammy Schill, isn't super spicy. It's a creamy chicken sauté over linguine with a touch of Cajun seasoning, bell peppers, and mushrooms. It makes a quick meal for 2 with just a touch of heat. Or, as Tammy says, a Southern-inspired recipe that is sure to add a little fun to your dinner table. Cook 4 ounces of linguine pasta according to the package directions. Now we'll make the sauce. Add 2 boneless, skinless chicken breast halves that you've cut into thin strips in a bowl. Add 2 teaspoons of Cajun seasoning. Toss the chicken until it's coated evenly in the spices. Then, melt 2 tablespoons of butter in a large skillet over medium heat. Add the chicken and cook until the juices run clear, about 5 to 7 minutes. Add 1 chopped green bell pepper and half of a chopped red bell pepper, along with 4 sliced fresh mushrooms and 1 minced green onion. Give this a stir and cook until the vegetables start to soften, about 2 to 3 minutes. Reduce the heat to medium-low and add 1½ cups of heavy cream, or substitute a lower fat cream if you prefer. Season the sauce with a 1/4 teaspoon of each: dried basil, lemon pepper, and salt, and 1/8 teaspoon each of garlic powder and ground black pepper. You can serve the sauce when the cream is heated through, but many Allrecipes members say they prefer a thicker sauce, so you can continue simmering it over low heat until the cream reduces a bit. Add the drained linguine pasta to a large serving bowl. Pour over the chicken and sauce, then give it a toss. Just before serving, sprinkle each portion with a tablespoon of grated Parmesan cheese. Allrecipes member DEVEINED says, "This recipe has now become a family favorite. I make it all the time and have doubled the recipe to serve company and handed them the recipe by request as they left. Do I need to say more?" This recipe for easy yet romantic filet mignon was submitted by an Allrecipes member chef in the making. He promises that the fillets are delicious as well as easy, and suggests serving them with your favorite vegetable and buttery mashed potatoes. Preheat the oven to broil and set the oven rack to a high position. Rub 2 8-ounce beef tenderloin steaks with 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Use fillets that are about 1 inch thick. Sprinkle the steaks with a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. And then sprinkle them with salt and ground black pepper to taste. Wrap a slice of bacon around each steak. Try hickory smoked or peppered bacon for a little more flavor. Secure it in place with a toothpick. Place the steaks on a broiler pan and broil them for 5 to 7 minutes on the first side. Turn the steaks over. And top each one with 1 tablespoon of minced shallot, or red or sweet onion if you prefer. Broil the steaks for an additional 5 to 7 minutes for medium doneness. Allrecipes member Joy, who gives easy yet romantic filet mignon a 5-star review, made the fillets for Valentine's Day for her family and reports that they loved it. "I'll definitely make this again," says Joy. Allrecipes member Sabrina T tells us this recipe for spaghetti carbonara is a super rich classic bacon and egg spaghetti dish, great to serve for company. This recipe also makes an unusual brunch offering. Let's start by cooking the pasta. Bring a large pot of salted water to a boil. And add in 1 pound of spaghetti. Cook the spaghetti until al dente, which is Italian for slightly underdone. It'll finish its cooking in the sauce later on. Drain the pasta and toss it well with 1 generous tablespoon of olive oil and set aside. Now, dice 8 slices of uncooked bacon. Then, in a large skillet, cook the bacon until it's slightly crisp. Remove the bacon from the pan and drain it on paper towels, reserving 2 tablespoons of the bacon fat in your skillet. Now, let's chop 1 medium onion, then mince 1 large clove of garlic. Now, we'll add 1 tablespoon of olive oil to the skillet with the reserved bacon fat in it. Add the chopped onion and cook until the onion is translucent. Add the minced garlic and cook it over low heat for another minute. At this point, you can add an optional 1/4 cup of dry white wine if you like. Next, beat 4 eggs and set them aside. Now, add the cooked spaghetti to the skillet, tossing it well to coat it. If the spaghetti seems dry, add in extra olive oil until the consistency is right. Still over medium heat, pour the beaten eggs over the spaghetti and toss it constantly with tongs until the eggs are barely set. Add the bacon bits back in. Now quickly add half a cup of Parmesan cheese and toss everything again. Add salt and pepper to taste and you're ready to serve. If you remember that bacon and Parmesan cheese are already salty, you won't make the mistake of oversalting. Serve it immediately with an extra sprinkle of Parmesan and some chopped parsley. Spaghetti carbonara is great for dinner, terrific for brunch, and a rich and satisfying pasta dish that's sure to please. This recipe for steamed lobster tails was submitted by Allrecipes member Nancy, who writes, "This basic recipe for steamed lobster tails is the best way to ensure perfect lobster every time." And it is so simple that member Robert64 writes, "As a cook just a little beyond beginner stage, this was an easy recipe to follow and it came out great." First, bring about 1 inch of water in a large pot to a boil. Add 1 tablespoon of sea salt to the boiling water. Then, place a steamer insert inside the pot. It should rest just above the water level. Now, use tongs to place 4 6-ounce lobster tails on the steamer rack. Many Allrecipes members write steaming lobster tails keeps the lobster meat more moist than cooking them in boiling water. You'll find these in the frozen section of your store. Cover the pot. Steam the lobster tails for 8 minutes. And don't peek. Allow the steam to do its work. Use tongs to remove the lobster tails to a platter or individual plates. Serve them with half a cup of melted butter as a dip. Many Allrecipes members write steamed lobster tails are so flavorful and moist, they needed only a squeeze of lemon and melted butter for dipping. However, Lou T takes it up a notch and makes a mixture of rice wine vinegar and light soy sauce with a sprinkle of chili flakes instead of using butter. The Allrecipes member who submitted this recipe comments, "This is the thickest, most wonderful Brunswick stew you've ever had. This is an old family recipe and the best stew around." Let's begin by deboning and shredding the meat from a 3-pound whole cooked chicken. Discard the skin and shred both the dark and white meat. Then, peel and chop a medium onion. You'll need a cup. Trim and chop 2 stalks of celery. Add a tablespoon of olive oil to a large pot over medium-high heat. Add the chopped onions and the celery, and cook, stirring often, until the vegetables have softened. Stir in 1½ pounds of ground pork. And 1½ pounds of ground beef. Cook, stirring to break up the large pieces of meat until the meat is evenly browned. Stir in the shredded chicken. Add a cup of ketchup and a ½ cup of hickory-flavored barbecue sauce and stir the sauce in. Add 3 14½ ounce cans of whole peeled tomatoes with their liquid. Break the tomatoes up with your spoon. Season to taste with salt. Ground black pepper, and hot sauce to taste. And stir everything. Next, place a whole green bell pepper into the mixture. Cover it and cook on a low heat, stirring occasionally for 2 hours or until the stew is thickened. After 2 hours, stir in 3 14¾ ounce cans of cream-style corn. Continue to simmer the stew for 1 more hour, or until the stew reaches the consistency you like. Remove the green pepper and either chop it and return it to the stew, or discard it. Serve the stew hot. Let us know how this Get a Husband Brunswick stew works for you. The Allrecipes member who submitted this recipe notes, "This recipe for lamb chops with balsamic reduction is a favorite in my house. It is an easy and quick recipe to make for 2 people. Let's start by preparing the spice rub for the lamb chops. In a small bowl, add together 3/4 teaspoon of dried rosemary, a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme, 1/4 teaspoon of dried basil, and salt to taste, and pepper to taste, and mix them together. Place 4 lamb chops that are about 3/4 of an inch thick on a plate and sprinkle the spices on both sides. Cover the plate with plastic wrap and set it aside for 15 minutes for lamb chops to absorb the flavors. Then, heat 1 tablespoon of olive oil in a large skillet over medium-high heat. Place the lamb chops into the skillet and cook them for about 3.5 minutes per side for medium rare, or longer if you prefer them cooked through more. Transfer the lamb chops from the skillet to a holding plate and let them rest while you use the skillet to make a sauce. Tent them with foil to keep them warm. Next, sauté a 1/4 cup of minced shallots and cook them for a few minutes until they're just browned. Stir in 1/3 cup of aged balsamic vinegar. Be sure to only use high-quality vinegar here. It will give the sauce the best flavor. Scrape any bits of lamb from the bottom of the skillet and stir in 3/4 cup of chicken broth. It's best to use homemade or low-sodium broth, so you can add salt according to your own taste. Continue to cook the sauce over medium-high heat, stirring often until the sauce is reduced by half. This will take about 5 minutes. If you are doubling the recipe or making a larger quantity, you may need to cook the sauce longer in order for it to thicken. Remove the sauce from the heat and whisk in a tablespoon of butter. Pour the sauce over the lamb chops and serve. One Allrecipes member notes, "This could not have been easier to make. It was the first time I'd ever cooked with lamb, but I followed the recipe exactly and it turned out perfectly. Awesome dish." One Allrecipes member commented that, after several chicken parm recipes, this is the one that we all love. It's simple and it's darned good, and I will definitely make this recipe again and again. Allrecipes member Candy, who submitted this recipe, wrote, "This is a very nice dinner for 2. Serve it with your favorite pasta and tossed greens." First, preheat your oven to 350 degrees and lightly grease a medium-sized baking sheet. Now, lightly beat 1 egg. Place 2 ounces of dry breadcrumbs in a separate shallow bowl or dish. Then, dip a skinless, boneless chicken breast into the egg. And then the breadcrumbs. Place the coated chicken breasts on the prepared baking sheet and bake them for 40 minutes until the chicken is no longer pink and the juices run clear when pricked with a fork. Now, spread 8 ounces of spaghetti sauce in the bottom of a 7 by 11 inch baking dish. Place the cooked breaded chicken breasts over the sauce and cover them with 4 ounces of sauce. Then sprinkle the top with 2 ounces of shredded mozzarella and a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan. And pop it back into the oven for another 20 minutes until the cheeses are melted and the sauce is heated through. Serve this chicken Parmesan with your favorite pasta and a green salad. And if you really are planning a cozy dinner for 2, perhaps a bottle of your favorite wine. Allrecipes member Andy Liu comments, "This recipe for sweet and hot glazed salmon was fantastic. Very quick and easy. We'll definitely make this again. Thanks for a great recipe." First, lightly grease a broiling pan and preheat your oven's broiler. Next, grate enough fresh ginger root to yield 1 tablespoon. Next, peel and mince 2 cloves of garlic. Now, chop enough dried apricots to equal 1/3 of a cup. In a saucepan over medium heat, add 1½ cups of apricot nectar, the dried apricots, 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 tablespoons of reduced sodium soy sauce, the grated ginger, the minced garlic, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Stir everything together. Bring the sauce mixture to a boil. Reduce the heat to medium-low and simmer the sauce for about 20 minutes or until it's reduced by about half and turns into a glaze. Be sure to stir occasionally to prevent the glaze from burning. Remove 1/4 cup of the glaze for basting and set the remaining glaze aside to serve with the cooked salmon. Next, place a 3/4 pound salmon fillet without the skin on the prepared boiling pan, presentation side down. Baste one side of the fillet with the glaze. Place the broiler 3 inches from the heat. Broil the fish for 4 to 6 minutes. Gently turn the salmon fillet over. Baste it with the apricot glaze. And broil it for another 4 to 6 minutes, basting a couple of times. The salmon is ready when it flakes easily with a fork. Serve the salmon with the remaining apricot glaze. One Allrecipes member comments that this recipe is great for dinner parties paired with rice pilaf, green beans, and salad. One reviewer wrote that it's an excellent and authentic recipe. A little more work in ingredients, but well worth it. Well, made from scratch comfort food like this dish usually is. This recipe will take about ½ hour to prep and 2½ hours to cook, though you can make it ahead of time and bake it about an hour before serving. First up, homemade meat sauce. In a Dutch oven, cook a pound of sweet Italian sausage over medium heat. I'm removing these casings and adding just the sausage mixture. When it's almost browned, we'll add 3/4 pound of lean ground beef and brown it along with the sausage. Mince about 1/2 cup of onion and mince 2 garlic cloves. And add those to the meat. When the meat is well browned, stir in a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, 2 6-ounce cans of tomato paste, and 2 6½-ounce cans of tomato sauce. Add 1/2 cup of water and mix everything together. Next, season the sauce with 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1½ teaspoons of dried basil, ½ teaspoon of fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, a tablespoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh parsley. Simmer the sauce, covered, for about 1.5 hours, stirring it occasionally. One reviewer wrote, "I made the sauce the day before and simmered it for 6 hours. Sounds like a lot of work, but how hard is it to check a pot simmering?" She had enough sauce for 2 pans of lasagna, so she made 2, baked 1 and froze the other. Now let's make the noodles. Bring a large pot of salted water to boil and cook 12 lasagna noodles for about 8 minutes. I cook mine a little shorter than the box directions so that they're al dente because they'll finish cooking in the oven and absorb that delicious sauce. When they're done, drain them and cool them in cold water so they don't stick. For the cheese filling, mix a 16-ounce container of fresh ricotta cheese with 1 egg and another 2 tablespoons of freshly chopped parsley. Season the cheese mixture with a pinch of salt. Now you can preheat the oven to 375 degrees. And let's assemble our masterpiece. Spread 1.5 cups of the meat sauce in the bottom of a 9 by 13-inch baking dish. Arrange 6 overlapping noodles lengthwise over the meat sauce. Spread them with half of the ricotta cheese mixture. And top that with about 1/4 pound of thinly sliced mozzarella cheese. Next, we'll spoon 1.5 cups of the meat sauce over the mozzarella and sprinkle it with 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan. Repeat that same layer again. Then we'll top it with more sauce, and then Parmesan cheese. Cover the top of the lasagna with foil, and to prevent it from sticking to the cheese, either spray the foil with cooking spray or make sure the foil doesn't come in contact with the cheese. Now we can bake it in our preheated oven for 25 minutes. Then remove the foil and bake it for an additional 25 minutes so that the Parmesan melts and forms a nice crispy top. Cool for 15 minutes before serving. Now, is this really the best lasagna in the world? Well, one reviewer said, "My hubby is a lasagna snob, and he said this is the best lasagna recipe ever." One Allrecipes member says this oven-roasted asparagus is an excellent recipe because it tastes great and is super easy and quick to prepare, thanks to the member who submitted it. First, preheat the oven to 425 degrees. Then, peel and mince a medium clove of garlic. Wash 1 bunch of thin asparagus spears. Trim the bottoms. And place the spears in a shallow oven-proof dish. Drizzle them with 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And toss to evenly coat. Then, sprinkle with 1.5 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese. The minced garlic, a teaspoon of sea salt, and a half teaspoon of ground black pepper. Toss the spears again to evenly coat. Arrange them in a single layer. Bake in the preheated oven until the asparagus spears are just tender, 12 to 15 minutes depending on their thickness. Drizzle the asparagus with a tablespoon of lemon juice and toss just before serving. Sprinkle with some more grated Parmesan. Oven roasted asparagus, simply scrumptious.